Now, more border closures and a soft border closure again today. What do they mean? I'll tell you what they mean. Virus aside, it's another setback for an economy on its knees. It's another setback for businesses who are holding on by the hair of their chinny chin chin, and another setback for the millions of Australians looking for a job. But these are community transmissions in New South Wales. 30 as of last count, as of 10 minutes to 9 from one pub, and several more being investigated. And so all New South Wales plated cars and all airline passengers will be stopped at the Queensland border as they were after midday today. No more border bandits. Now, those in hotspots, including all of Victoria, and residents from or who have been in the two Sydney areas of Liverpool and Campbelltown are now banned. Think about that for a second. It proves to me that Queensland was wrong in keeping their borders closed to those in New South Wales for as long as they did. Now, back then, there were weeks on end when New South Wales didn't record a single community transmission. The state was doing all the heavy lifting in taking in overseas travellers returning home. But that was enough to shut the Queensland border for everyone indefinitely. But now we have more community transmission, much more, in the 30s, from the Crossroads Hotel and other isolated spots. Anastasia Palaszczuk is only barring those from the hotspots. So work that policy out. Maybe we should be thankful that their policy is totally flawed and inconsistent. Meanwhile, South Australian Premier Steve Marshall, well, he's not let us down. He got spooked even before today's numbers came out and postponed his border reopening plans to residents from New South Wales and the ACT.
We were looking very carefully at what was happening in New South Wales, and I said there was a real question mark as to whether or not we would be lifting the restriction on people from New South Wales and the ACT coming into South Australia as of Monday next week. The Transition Committee has now made a decision. We will not be lifting that restriction as of Monday next week. The super spreader event, which has occurred at the Crossroads Hotel on the Hume Highway, is really of great concern.
At least he's consistently scared. But before those of you travelling north consider whether it is worth coping with the queues, and there are plenty of them, and proving your place of residence, or possibly having to pay your own way in quarantine, do you sing? This is important, because you may be able to score an exemption. Danny Minogue did, yes. The entertainment identity touched down in the Gold Coast over the weekend. That means she's an overseas traveller returning home from the virus-plagued United States, it was LA, and should go straight into quarantine for 14 days. Right? Wrong. If you're famous and you get a doctor's letter, you're exempted by Queensland's Chief Health Officer, Jeanette Young.
No, there's no special treatment for anyone. I do ensure that anyone who is struggling with hotel quarantine gets support, and we have support arrangements in place for that situation.
So just to be clear on that, is that because she's a judge on a show that she's been granted this other quarantine?
No, she has a COVID-safe plan that is being managed by an independent third party. That's the reason that she got that exemption.
And that's obviously not incurring any charges because her own accommodation, is that right?
It's not incurring any charges to the state, to the Queensland Government. She's funding all those arrangements.
Gee, it looks, sounds and smells like special treatment to me. Maybe it's just special treatment for the rich who can afford a nice reference and employ their own health team at a private Gold Coast mansion somewhere. Good on her. Maybe Janet Young's a fan, I don't know, but I know I can't sing. And meanwhile, in Victoria, Chairman Dan is still batting away question after question about his failed quarantine system, which, according to his Chief Medical Officer, may even be responsible for every hotspot in the country. But Dan wasn't buying into that again.
Well, that's not a matter for me to determine either in fact or to offer you an opinion. We've got a retired judge, Jennifer Coate, doing that work, and that is the most appropriate way forward. It's entirely a matter for Judge Coate. And the question might be appropriate, but me answering it certainly is not. Those matters, who was in charge, how that worked, decisions that were made, all of those issues are rightly the province of retired Judge Coate. I'm not criticising you for asking the question. I'm just pointing out that it's very challenging to be able to provide a commentary. That's just not the right thing to do.
Rubbish. This daily no-comment approach is so unjust for everyone. And I'll tell you why. Dan knows they all stuffed up. How do we know that those who were responsible for that program are not still having a say, are not still in the hierarchy sitting in Dan's office saying, let's do that tomorrow? How do we know that they are not using their skilled incompetence to place more lives in danger as they did by bungling quarantine? That's why his no comment is unjust. The Republic of Victoria, you deserve to know from Chairman Dan who's in, who's out and why. What we do know, thanks to some good old-fashioned digging by journos at The Age, is that the walls on this quarantine debacle are closing in on Dan. Today, some handy leaked emails prove that the government knew about the pathetic health protocols associated with Melbourne's hotels from day one. This is week one, in the first 24 hours. This was primary school-style quarantine regime, this one. No, primary school kids wouldn't get it that badly wrong. The bureaucrats don't want to take the can for this, and so they are leaking. Go hard. They told their superiors about how ill-equipped these facilities were. There were a lack of masks, a lack of gloves, and those being quarantined were allowed out of their rooms. They weren't sure about that. That's who was in charge. Well, he can keep running from the questions at every daily press conference, but he can't hide. He has a duty to tell, at least Victorians, who wrecked it for everyone and where are they now.